Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, coming to you live from Exchange in Miami. Joining me for this segment, we have Amanda Rebello, Head of Xtrackers US Onshore at DWS Group. She's going to discuss the current market backdrop and the role ETFs have to play opportunistically and strategically in this environment. Amanda, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks very much, Jill.
You got it. Let's talk about Xtrackers. What's the US strategy behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have historically been number 2 within Europe. We've been in this US market for over a decade, in fact. Clients probably know us most for currency hedging exposures and then also for high yield as well. But we also have a number of different exposures as well. So China, ESG, and then more recently we've started to look at kind of dividend strategies as well as also thinking about thematics as well. So our most recent launches last year in particular were very much focused on thematics.
Let's talk about how institutional clients and retail clients are using ETFs in their portfolios.
Yeah, sure. So I think especially given that there is volatility in the market, while it's drifting up quite a lot, there is still a lot of vol across all different asset classes, relatively speaking. We're still not at the highs in terms of VIX, for example, but clients that we speak to, investors that we speak to globally, but also within the US, are thinking more about liquidity again. It's kind of been a topic which hasn't really been at the forefront for a number of years, but we definitely see more kind of engagement with our capital markets team these days across different asset classes. What's really interesting to see though is that, kind of when we were having these conversations maybe 5 years ago or so, it was very centered on fixed income in particular, but it's great to see now that, the number of ETFs on the fixed income side has really increased, and so we have even more nuanced exposures. I think a great example would be high yield, for example. So we led with HYLB, which is our broad-based exposure, and now we're getting as granular as double B, single B, X financials, which we just launched in December last year. And then with these kind of more nuanced exposures, then that's where we get the questions around liquidity in particular.
So with the current market backdrop that we're in right now, right?
Yeah.
Higher rates for longer, expectation they may come down this year.
Yeah.
What kind of roles can ETFs play from an opportunistic perspective as well as defensively?
Yeah, so I think quite a lot of different ways in which we can use them. So I think clients who are looking for income, for example, to be beating like these higher cash rates that we've seen over the last 12 months or so, there's a lot of interesting exposures. We've seen in particular a lot of clients going into our HDEF product, which is our International Dividends Fund. And the reason why this is interesting is because international equities, especially European equities, typically pay more on the dividend side than say S&P 500. You have a historical yield of around 4% versus around 1.5, and when you look at a dividend focused strategy, then you get even more of a boost, so you can be targeting even 6% or so. If you then look at kind of sustainable dividend payers where it's not just a yield trap, then you can also think about some degree for potential capital preservation. And then we also see as well clients using things like segmenting different parts of high yield, for example. So looking at lower beta high yield as basically trying to capture the higher quality high yield piece. And then we've also seen that on the equity side as well, this kind of theme of quality. So QARP, our quality at a reasonable price product, we've seen kind of renewed interest in that fund. We launched it about 5-6 years ago, but it's kind of got a second wind at the moment.
All right, Amanda, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from Exchange. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.